Fiona and me are sort of synced up already in our minds, so that's a good start. So yeah, do you mind running the slides now, Mark?
Yeah, let's pop into where we're going then. So John's working very closely in the space of mindfulness and burnout, and he'll tell you a bit more as we go through. And the titles there sort of speak for themselves. In the time that we've got together, what is well-being? What are the key ingredients? And what about this concept of cultural change to make sure well-being sticks? We're going to actually start off, I'm going to back before you get to that one, John, if I can do. Let me just double check that share, everybody, because I usually get technical hitches as I go through. And just check back on chat that everybody can see this slide here. John, I've got you verbally. Can you tell me that you can see the title slide?
Yeah, that's great, Mark. And do you mind just going back to my picture for a second?
You're very vain this morning, John, but of course I will.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, just to pick up on Mark's comments there, what today is about is going to be that interactive session, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from for this session. So I spent some time in the corporate sector doing various roles. I worked in legal and then in debt recovery. I had my own company as well, and I'm this type of person who very much is all or nothing, so I focus very much on my tasks in hand, but I give it 100%. And that took me to the top of my profession. I did very well and continue to do well. But what that did lead me to experiencing was a period of burnout where, I didn't really cope. I think, putting it in layman's terms, I lost the plot for a while. But I think part of that was because I didn't have coping mechanisms in place, strategies to help me. So that led me to start exploring the world of mindfulness, yoga, and then getting academically involved in holistic well-being and then well-being in the workplace. So the journey is quite a long one, and I could spend quite a while telling you about that. And feel free to message me about that if you have experienced burnout or stress at work, or you're interested in my journey from the corporate sector to working in well-being. Happy to give it any help and advice. But where I'm at now is I'm at Warwick University studying a PhD. PhD is working around stress and burnout, and we're looking at how to prevent stress and burnout in a workplace. Believe it or not, and we'll touch on this later in the wellbeing session, there isn't actually any clear definition of what burnout is. There's certainly no medical definition. So people allude to it, and certain countries have different positions. But in the UK, there isn't any clear definition. We have certain activities that are helpful. So you have things like mental health first aiders and other schemes that generally help once people have experienced issues. But really, there's no consistency to any of these practices. So I want to touch on some of the experiences I've had academically, scientifically, and then practically in the workplace, and then just draw out some of your opinions into that area. Last point then, before we pass back over to Mark, is that it's really an opportunity for us to have a chat today. So I'd like this to be quite informal. If you've got questions or you want to talk about your questionnaires, it'd be great to hear your opinions.
That's fantastic. And now back to the technical guru here, who's or aspiring guru, who's not doing too good, but I'm kind of getting there. Back to the slides, and these are the topics that we're going to be going through. What well-being is. Then some key ingredients, some cultural change, thoughts, which will finish the session together. So here we go. I'm going to pop a poll to everybody. Feel free to engage or not as you feel fit. And it's just a general survey to see what people feel at the moment. So away we go there. So you should see a question pop up on your screen about the general well-being sense in your organization at the moment. So this is confidential. I've set it up as confidential, so do feel free to put your responses into that, and they will not be passed anywhere else. So we're not recording who's saying what. So there's 21 folk on, and about 13 have voted so far. So the votes are coming in. I'll pull it around about 18, 19. We'll move on. And another 30 seconds or so, 17 folk have voted. John, have you voted on this one? Are you desisting?
Oh, yeah, all right, there you go. So yeah, I work in a number of organisations. I'll think of the worst one.
Okay,
And
that's
I'll,
fine.
I'll submit my answer for that one. There you go.
Absolutely. And I'll end the polling now, and then you can just about to admit Alexandra. So somebody called Alexandra is joining us. And hi, Alexandra, if you're joining us, good to see you. And I'm about to show the poll results. And Alexandra, if it's lovely to have you. If you could just really kindly flip off your mic so that we get all the background noise from folk. But we will be engaging with you in chat and probably with a breakout room later. It would be good to see the results, wouldn't it? So here we go.
I think the little dire one was from me.
Was that the one organisation you were thinking of?
Oh, they're terrible. Well-being is not a word that I think you even utter in that company.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, I understand. It's pretty interesting. Most of the time we get between the two that are there, we've got pretty good and acceptable. Usually the balance is about right, that we've got slightly more on acceptable here. And as we go through, what we'll be discussing is that relation of acceptability. There's somebody's mic on, I think, and the sound's coming through. So if you could just mute the mic, I'd be really, really grateful. So what I was going to say is the relation of that acceptability. I'd love to do more polls here, John, about has anybody worked in a place where well-being is fantastic and how that relates to productivity. And
yeah. It's interesting, and we don't have the stats here, but I can dig them out for anybody who's interested in stats on various things. But yeah, most people, when surveyed, most corporations do not tick the exceptional. Most will say that they're good. I think most companies are switched on to bringing well-being in. They're starting to recognise how important it is. But yeah, the exceptional really doesn't come out a lot, and that's quite worrying because we expect our leaders to be exceptional. We expect our performances to be exceptional. We expect, you know, sickness rates or whatever to be exceptional and targeted, but we don't look at it in well-being. So yeah, I'll 100%, Debbie. We'll ask for a few. We'll ask for a few bits of feedback after you some stats and stuff sent over. And yeah, would the results be different if it wasn't COVID? Well, yeah, we can show you stats before and after. It's an interesting point because yes, the stats have increased in terms of negativity towards well-being and stress, though burnout is one of the #1 things that's trending at the moment. Burnout and stress is trending above any other searchable term in corporate well-being space. However, those trends were happening before COVID-19. So this isn't anything new. The trends haven't changed. They've just been exacerbated. But yeah, I think that'll be an interesting thing to do, Mark, just afterwards, if we remember to capture people's questions if they want stats and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, we've got some folk joining. There's still some background noise coming through. I don't know if it's from you, John. I don't think it is. I don't think it's from me either. So
I've got Thomas singing in the background. That's the only noise I've got.
Oh, brilliant. That's really, really good. What kind of music is he on at the moment?
He's singing. He's just running around singing. I don't know what he's
yeah.
SpongeBob or something.
Good lad. Excellent. So welcome to a couple of folk who've just joined in. We've done a poll so far on well-being and the status in organisations. John has mentioned that there has been some COVID and pre-COVID differences. Well, somebody else is just joining in, so I'm going to just jump back to the slides for the rest of us. So moving on then, John, checking that you can see the slides.
Yeah, I can see
we're now looking at the views by Deloitte. So I'll move on.
So picking up on the points that were made previously, analysis by Deloitte, which follows up from the Stevenson Farmer report. I can send you the report. I can send you the follow-up by Deloitte. Basically, it was talking about presenteeism and how much of a cost this is. This is when you don't have a well-being culture in place. Now, I don't mean to be like knocking any incentive on the head, because as it says in the report, if you spend even £1 on well-being, you're going to get £5 back in terms of return of investment. So I'm not going to knock any specific initiative. However, what they were generally saying was this presenteeism comes about where you don't have a cohesive well-being strategy. So the outcome of this report was saying, well, yeah, it's great that you've got well-being in place, and it's great that you've got, I don't know, a yoga class, and you've got this, that, and the other. But what's the executive team like? What's the communications, the internal manuals that you refer to? What's the communications via emails? How many one-to-ones are you having? Is your lighting correct to stimulate people? Are your chairs in the right place to make sure people have a comfortable workspace? Are you looking after people's food and their diet and their exercise? So what they were talking about was a cohesive strategy, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that report is really interesting because it's a report that's been done over the last 4 years. So you're talking about 4 years of data, central government, which I'm working with on a project, central government, Deloitte, looking at well-being. What is well-being? Why are we having such a big issue? And then presenteeism. And presenteeism is when you turn up to work and you're not engaged. So you can be there doing your job. You may even do your job, but you're not engaged. You're not listening to what your boss is saying. You're not really focusing on your task in hand. And why is that not important? Why is that important? Well, because the job isn't being done particularly well, or it could be done a lot better. You're not engaging with your company, your staff, so your relationships in the workplace aren't as good. You're getting disenfranchised, and you're more likely to be off sick, or you're likely to leave the job. So presenteeism is a term you might hear coming up over the next 12 months.
Yep. So let's move through, John, to the next element, which is this question of what well-being is, and you've kindly put together for us some stats here, which is a bit of a mind-blowing set of bar chart numbers, but feel free to go ahead and pick out the components.
Yeah, so this is a well-being cultural analysis. So the first two here, financial performance and brand quality, they probably are resultant for the next bars here. Specifically, what I'd like to draw your attention to is the culture, which I've just mentioned, 21%, and then you've got diversity as well. So those two are very impactful on teams and environment and creating that well-being space. And that's something that we're going to be talking about a lot today, and that's where the Deloitte report was focusing. The environmental, I touched a little bit on that. That's like things like having the right lighting, heating, chairs, desks, all those sorts of things, or no chairs and desks. Expansion, is your company's well-being, your company cultural vision? Are you looking at the right areas to expand? And are you able to retain your best talent? So I mentioned to you about the presenteeism. Well, keeping hold of your best talent is very important. It's very damaging if you've invested years into somebody, they're functioning very well in your business, and then they leave and go to a competitor. I mean, imagine the impact financially, if nothing else on your business. So those following 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are probably the most important, and the first two, I'd say, come as a result of that. So it'd be interesting to get people's thoughts and opinions on that slide. Just any thoughts that jump out to you, how important you think each one is.
And as folk are thinking, we'll encourage a bit of chat on this in a second, John, as you said. What strikes me from being in a projects and the financial performance of the board and the company kind of involvement of my consultancy history is that without a really good, robust environment, commercial environment, people feel insecure anyway. So which is why the financial performance is actually very important for well-being, because we want to see our businesses are growing, not shrinking, because that fundamentally back to Maslow's hierarchy, isn't it? And the same with brand quality and innovation. If there is no innovation, no change, people feel that their companies, their organizations are more vulnerable. So I think those on the left are really, for me, represent the kind of bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy, and moving up, it's getting higher up with personal motivation. So what we're going to say in the chat, just to stopping that one, you may have seen well-being issues arising within the organizations that you're in. And I'm just wondering in the chat, whether it could drop in what the reasons might be. What would be the reasons that you have seen for well-being being impacted within your organization? And you can pick any of those bars there that I've just popped back up again. What are the main reasons why people's well-being tends to get a little bit shaky? From the list that are there on the screen at the moment, is it the culture itself? Is it the environment? Is it lack of talent, as John was saying? Is it poor financial performance? I'd be really curious to see what you think, and do look at the chat yourselves and get some thoughts from others as they're contributing. So there's the question again. What have you seen in your company as the factors affecting, in your organizations, factors affecting the well-being sense out of those things on the screen? Let's see what we've got, John, as thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's got a culture coming through.
Culture from Nicola.
Mm-hmm.
Financial performance from you, Fiona. Yeah, the shortage of money makes a huge amount. Yeah, huge amount of pressure on folk.
Culture.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just going to step in. I mean, if it starts to change, I'll change also to be responsive. But before you all answered, I was anticipating you were either going to say culture or diversity. Yeah, financial performance is very important as well. I'm not saying it isn't. But, you know, again, when you talk about these stats, culture comes out as like number one nearly always, because if you haven't got a well-being culture, how can you develop well-being? And this is why I turn to things like, you know, you've got the stress officers and mental health first aiders and these sorts of things. Great initiatives, really good, and can be quite effective. But why not prevent it before it gets to that stage? Why do you want to wait until the fire has been lit before you put it out? Why not just not light the fire? And that was the issue that I had. I worked in law and debt recovery, highly combative environments. It was that environment of, you know, I eat stress for breakfast. Well, as Mark says, you eat stress for breakfast, that's great, but it may not be very good for you. Mm-hmm. So changing the culture then is going to help the well-being. So it's going to prevent those issues from coming. And I'm so glad that you are all on board with that message, because that is nearly always comes out. And one of the reasons we're here today is to talk about it, but it's also to highlight that organisations like Goodfoot offer training in various areas, you know, workshops and training in these areas of how to develop well-being, how to, you know, work with stress and burnout, how to help leaders. So the reason that we look to put these type of webinars on is to raise awareness and to let you know that there's organisations out there, not just us, who do this type of work. And it is worth just chatting and getting these ideas, because I think sometimes bringing awareness to actually where the issues are is the start of the fix.
Mm. And Michael, thank you for your comment. Expansion is a big one for Michael's company. And Michael, if you do get a chance, is that making well-being better, or is it making it worse because of the stress of expansion? Or do people feel better because the company is expanding? I'd be really curious if you could type into chat your views on that one. And John, yeah, diversity is starting to change. You're right. People are far more aware. John.
Yeah, it's just a personal point here. So I was trained, or I am trained in mindfulness. I'm a mindfulness teacher. The PhD that I'm doing is involving mindfulness in the workplace. So we're testing elements of mindfulness on burnout and stress. But for me, why is mindfulness, or something like that, a compassionate leadership, mindfulness, why is that useful to help develop a culture of well-being? Because for me, it works on diversity. Why does it work on diversity? Well, it focuses your attention on being more present with yourself and your feelings, present in the moment, so you're not looking at the past or the future. And it works on something that I think Mark can pick up on a little bit here, I think called unconscious bias. So developing these skills in mindfulness, compassion, having that as a way to inform your culture, your well-being culture, can really help with diversity and inclusivity, because it helps diminish unconscious bias.
Yeah, a very quick word on that. Just a story that most of you will have come across. I was working with a rail company late last year. We're talking about unconscious bias, John, and everybody agreed that everybody else had unconscious bias. Yeah, so it's very easy to identify unconscious bias in everybody else, and I'm exactly the same. If you ask me, Mark, where are you unconsciously biased? I have no idea. I'm just completely unconscious about it, so don't really know. But we actually got to the root of it in that workshop. For many people, it was very, very interesting how a process of self-examination and then looking at situations can reveal our own unconscious biases, and then begin to give managers the confidence to talk about unconscious bias. It was getting it on the agenda, John. That was the issue, getting people willing to talk.
Yeah. And somebody mentioned here, I saw a comment come up that she went to a mindfulness a workshop that was talking about unconscious bias recently. And that's really, really important, because there's lots of these things around, you know, and mindfulness teachers in the workplace are really great to have. And I think I attended one on unconscious bias, maybe even be the same one, and it really blew me away. The teacher was really great.
Yeah.
I suppose what my message here is that these things are brilliant, but we need to be cohesive about how they're implemented. And so that, you know, if you're going to bring in 4 or 5 different organizations delivering different types of training, that's okay, but that needs to be really coordinated in a policy and a culture of well-being, so that everyone's feeding the same message and developing that culture. When we go to different types of training, you know, all over the place, it can be quite damaging in some ways, because the same message isn't being consistent throughout. And I suppose that's my takeaway from all this, is that developing a culture takes a long time, you know, and I think it's not an easy thing to do. But I think that if we start to be more cohesive about what we do and bring in things like mindfulness, but make it part of the overall culture change, the strategy of well-being, I think it's going to be far more impactful. Because for me, the big thing about culture change is bringing everyone together. So we've got leaders singing the same thing, we've got people who are on the floor singing the same thing, we've got managers, you know, everybody is sending the same message, and I think that's really, really powerful. I went to Apple a year or 2 ago. It was for a tech conference, and I remember going there to the restroom, and it had this really nice restroom. This guy came out and he gave me the hand gel. It wasn't COVID, it was just sort of moisturizer. It was really lovely, and he just said, you know what, have a nice day. And they were talking about the culture in their organisation. I can tell you from that first contact I had with him, so the moment I left, I think they gave us like a little sweet or something else. But it was just so nice. I felt very positive. I'm not saying that they don't get things wrong, but for me, that's a culture working really well. Every micro aspect of that company was really focusing on well-being.
And that requires a strategy from the top as well as a bottom-up information. Now we've got Nicola. Thank you so much for what you've said. Nicola says, I think if you have a culture or a leadership who do understand stress or mental health, it filters all the way through. Nicola, you're absolutely spot on. What I've found over the years is that organizations always reflect the personalities of those that are leading it. And they can't, whatever systems you put in, people are copied, aren't they? And yeah, that's true. And Natalie, thank you, Natalie, was on a webinar on mindfulness and unconscious bias, and it was excellent. That's great. And it's getting these topics talked about, so that they can be uncovered. And then actually, what's the gain? It is a sense of well-being, but it's a sense of productivity, it's improvements productivity as well. Tanaka, thank you very much. Companies are different, culture is different. We're going to get onto that now. Moving on, John, to the next point. I'm just going to share a screen, which is some of the key ingredients, just a couple, just to give us a taster. How do we get well-being started and working within our organizations? And none of this is going to be a surprise, right? It's going to be pretty well common sense and blindingly obvious. So here we go to the next slide. Skilled leadership, John.
Yeah, I was going to say that somebody mentioned, I think you picked up on it, about each organization is different. That's right. You can't just go, here's a cultural change program, here's a leadership program, there you go. It doesn't work like that. People are people, you know, and organizations are, like Mark said, a reflection of people. And that's why, for me, you've got to approach each company like an individual and work with them one-to-one, you know, and bring through that identity and the passions that company have. And leadership is a great place to start. For me, leadership skills come through when somebody's highly emotionally intelligent. Now, you can start off from a lower emotional intelligence and have that raised through work that you can do through training and mindfulness and various other things. Really great at doing that, mindset work. And once you've got a leader that's starting to engage emotionally, starting to recognize within themselves what's going on and with their team, you're starting then to be more inclusive and people feel more connected. But definitely skilled leadership is where I look to start.
Yeah, and you'll see a number of, I've just switched it off actually, but I'll get back to it, John. 1 second. This is my technical acumen coming in. There you go. So we've got 6 factors there. And I don't know what you would feel, John, is the most important one to start in terms of getting leaders to be aware. I've got my views and everybody else has got theirs, but what do you think at the moment?
Yeah, I'd like definitely to hear everybody's views. You know, you can see the 6, put them in order for us in a moment. But yeah, for me, I should say that the higher than average emotional intelligence is very important, and compassion.
Yeah.
I would say number 2 and number 3 would be compassion and the intelligence. For me, I need to trust and respect my leader.
Yeah.
But I think they all feed into each other.
Sorry, John. I nearly interrupted you there, but I'm going to blame Zoom technology. I'm going to claim that. I'm going to claim there was a lag. Actually, there wasn't. I just wasn't listening, and I interrupted you. But there you go. So into the chat then again. Have a quick go, everybody. Just at that list of 6 there. Just jot in a couple or 3 numbers that you think for you you have seen as the most important factor of skilled leadership for you personally. It'd be good to do a very, very quick chat thought. So drop into chat a number. It might be number 2 for you, number 4, number 3, and number 6. I don't know, number 2 and number 4, whatever it happens to be. And let's have a very, very quick look at chat to see your initial instance. And then we're going to move on to another subject and get some other thoughts as well. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 from Sally. Thank you. Yeah. I've actually worked for a very compassionate, ineffective manager once. He was a delight. It was just number 5, 1, 4, and 5 we got, and he it was so compassionate, but really didn't get much done. So number 2 sort of failed. So it is a combination, isn't it?
It is combination.
Fiona, I understand healthcare, charities, NHS. So that does affect it. John, thank you. Number 2, trust to start with. Interestingly, John, that's one of the 4 that Coutts and Posner have spotted in their international leadership studies over 30 years now. That trust is the highest rated requirement in a leader. That's in the book, The Leadership Challenge, which I would really, really, encourage. Right, quite a few thoughts there. 4 and 2, says Colin, are evolving products. Yeah, fair point. So leadership is an area to aim at, and I think you're right, John. Unless it has to be bottom up and top down, right? Unless people need the equipping with ideas, workshops, books, thoughts, time, a whole host of things, but the leadership need to encourage that and model it and demonstrate it, as Covey said, model the way.
Yeah, and you know, we through Goodfoot work with some very interesting webinars and some training in leadership areas, and you know, I think that a lot can be gained from going to something like this. You know, having a chat about it, raising awareness, sparks that idea, doing some training, doing some work in that area, I think can be very impactful. And going back to the first slides where Deloitte were talking about that £1 investment for £5 return, I think what they were saying is, particularly at the moment with COVID, I think someone else mentioned about COVID means that we need to be more robust as companies. We need to be more switched on to how to look after ourselves and our staff. We need to be more switched on financially, how to make money, what are our opportunities, and more resistant to change. And that will bring us into our next bit about resilience. But these type of things that we're talking about here are not just nice to do. These are essential at the moment. Deloitte were commissioned by the government, and they've spent a lot of time and money doing this research because the government know well-being equals getting out of COVID a lot better, a lot faster, a lot easier.
Yes. And I love Fiona's comment. Clemencia, yes, trust and respect is earned. It takes time. Intention is one of the most important things in leadership that I've ever seen, John. It's the stated intent of the leadership team or the manager or the team leader or the supervisor. Doesn't matter what level, it's a stated intent which is then backed up. And you can actually, trust and respect is earned, Clemencia. I completely agree. You can get a big kickstart by a very public statement of intent. Now that, by public, I mean, it could be just to the team or just to the department or just to the area. However, it's a statement, and then it's okay, we'll see if you do this then, and then follow through of that statement. So intention statements are very, very powerful.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that. So I do a lot of work, well, myself and Mark do a lot of work in the law space. So we work with legal companies, and that can be, when I say legal companies, that could be barristers in chambers, private practice solicitors, in-house lawyers, you know, various remits of the legal space. But what I'm trying to say here is that how do you get intentional well-being into that space when the culture really isn't designed for it? Yep. You have fee earners and fee burners, I think someone mentioned in one of their questionnaires, their responses. And that's so true. If you're not billing your hours, you're seen as, well, you're wasting money. Yeah. So intention's really, really important. And they struggled, you know, look at law firms now. They're traditionally, back in the day, they're a step away from where most companies are. And I don't mean to be stereotypical, but that generally speaking is true. But what they've tried to do to address that generally as a sector is they've introduced a thing called the Mindfulness Business Charter and adopted that across the legal space as well as across the general business space. And what that tries to do is encourage the qualities of mindfulness that we were talking about, inclusivity, higher emotional intelligence, and getting firms to sign up to it. Because in the lawyer's mind, once they've signed up to something like that, they've made an intention. And then the intentional quality of well-being will start to be imparted. So I just thought I'd probably rambling on too much, but I thought,
no worries. It's I was kind of just about to say, John, I love what you're saying.
You're rambling on too much.
Because I love what you're saying, and it's so good. We want to can it and move on to the next bit, which is going to be better. Right. So the next element I'm just going to introduce to folk here as we're all watching is this concept of burnout. And as we get into that now, another poll for everybody to have a very, very quick look at. So here we go. We'll give this a few moments to see for folks. I mean, I'm guessing, John, in the example that you gave of the dire situation, that burnout is increasing.
No, they've actually got better.
They got better. That's really good. We're going to give it another 30 seconds or so for anybody to pop in their thoughts in this poll. There's 18 out of 24 have. Now this is very interesting. I'd love to do a poll about guessing what you think the poll results are going to be. We won't do that. We'll just jump to the results now and have a quick look and see what you think. There we go. I guess no surprises for most folk, that most folk are seeing the signs of burnout beginning to increase. Not necessarily, it's very difficult to say it is definitely burnout, but there are signs that we're all familiar with, won't go into them. And most, you know, over half of folk are seeing it increase. And that's no doubt to do with the medical and social and economic situation too. So moving on to burnout, John.
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, very interesting, you know, and whoever was making those comments on the chat about working from home being a good thing, I'm a massive fan of it. I'm very introverted in many ways. I like being by myself, doing my research and writing. So being left alone to do it at home was really great for me. However, there's many aspects to burnout, and that report of the Stevenson Farmers Deloitte picks up on it in small bits. I've got some research on it as well that you might want to dig into. I can send it across about burnout. But one of the elements of burnout that is strongest at the moment and is causing people to feel burnout is the changing nature of our environment. People don't like change. Change equals stress for a lot of people. You know, worry about the job, Some people worry about working from home. How can I do Zoom, this, that, and the other? Worrying about going back into work or working at work and at home. So this changing nature of COVID has been directly responsible for an increase overall in burnout. So I think to traditionally we think about sitting at home, sitting at work, being stressed out, phones ringing. That's one element of it. There's another element of it, and they call this depersonalization, where we get lost. We start to become disenfranchised with ourselves because we're scared really about the future. We're scared of, you know, our opportunities. And this is the part of burnout that's been massively affected by COVID, and we have seen an increase. You know, if our jobs are safe and we enjoy working from home like me, I've loved it, you know. But a lot of people are not in that position. A lot of people have had to change their jobs, a lot of uncertainty. Maybe their roles have changed, all sorts of things. And we just finish, I don't want to dwell too much on the burnout, but just to finish really on a definition of burnout, it's on 3 levels. So traditionally, people think of burnout as being emotionally exhausted. You know, blooming heck, you know, getting angry and all this, that, and the boss is shouting, your phones are ringing, you're going. That's one element. You have this other element, depersonalization, where you start to feel disenfranchised with your environment. You think that you can't achieve your goals, you don't want to be there. Maybe you don't know what the future holds, or you don't even want the future. And then there's another element of burnout, and this means that you're struggling to come into work. You're unable to get there. You don't want to be part of the team. You feel that you know, that everyone's out to get you. You want to spend more and more time, you know, by yourself. You go into sort of like an isolation zone. So those 3 elements of burnout is worth knowing, because I think what's concentrated a lot on is that first one, the emotional exhaustion. And when people talk about doing resiliency training, and we do it here at Good Fit, there's lots of resiliency stuff we do. It's very good, but it only focuses on that first one. So doing a consistent course of training over all 3 of those elements of burnout can really help prevent stress and burnout in the workplace, but it can also help change the culture, because once we understand about how to deal with burnout and stress, we can then make adaptations in the culture to change.
Yeah. And just a flag, 10 minutes to go, and we'll wrap up for folk to get on to the next meeting. But Nicola, yes, you're right. Working from home, everyone can see the chat from Nicola has allowed people to have more flexibility, and there's been contrasting results of that. There's the majority, we're talking to one firm, where we're not, John, where the majority of people don't want to go back to work.
Yeah, that's
the majority found it a benefit, but there are a minority that have found it really, really, really tough. And of course, like as Fiona says, we're all on extremely high alert because of our loved ones and ourselves in terms of what's happening with the COVID situation. Moving on to the next element of what wellbeing contains. You were going to mention very briefly, then we'll get on to culture to wrap up, John. I'm going to mention very briefly, do you hear that subliminal messaging? It wasn't subliminal, was it? I actually stated it very briefly, John. I kept saying. So
he's using his NLP on me.
I'm using it, yeah. I'm trying to program John to summarize this. So we got well-being is body and mind that you've mentioned together, the physical as well as the mental. That's very, very important, right?
So I'll be brief. A rounded well-being culture will look at things like nutrition, what staff eat, what routines are in place. Just handing out gym memberships is great, but really if it's not part of the culture, we're not helping people to do the right types of physical well-being, then it's going to be less effective. But physical well-being is very important. It's very important for performance and for happiness levels. That can be things like physical classes, yoga, Pilates, those sorts of things. There could be general exercises that people are recommended. Nutritional help, having the right diet, making sure people are eating at the right times. There was a company, I wasn't involved with, but in the States, they did, I think it was 10 minutes before the start of the day, the staff did I think it was 5 minutes of yoga, something like, the stats are a bit sketchy here. They do yoga about 5 minutes before and then 5 minutes during the day, and they noticed a seismic shift in the performance and happiness of their staff, and that was over a 6-month study, and that was just 5 minutes of yoga each day. So it's worth looking at that if you haven't already got that in your culture.
Yeah, as Nicholas said, yeah, there are a couple of folk. And we work with John. Same thing. Children. If you've got children at home, then working at home has been somewhat of a challenge, as well as a delight, of course. So yeah, that adds to it too.
Yeah.
So the blending of the physical. We were going to go into quick subgroups for a chat at 1:45. We're probably going to run out of time for that, and I think it's probably worth just moving through.
I was just going to say, Mark, it might be worth then considering the time, just to get people's opinions back on the questionnaires that were sent out. And if anybody particularly wants to chat about that, we can feed that into the last bit of the wellbeing culture.
Absolutely, I think that's dead right. We're in sync there. So I was going to suggest, because at this stage we were going to just jump into chat rooms and talk about the wellbeing culture as a result of the questionnaires folk have had before this session, and then you'll move on to the wellbeing culture, the analysis from Mind, John. So it may well be worth, rather than going into chat rooms to do that, just to follow up exactly what you've said, simply do it through chat itself. So rather than breakout rooms, into chat itself again. And the questionnaire focused on the certain elements, John, that would be worth just popping into chat now. That you would think it would be well worth discussing and getting people's views.
Yeah, let me just bring it up on my PC here.
I think for me mainly it was on approach. I wonder if anybody does in their organizations have a well-being approach that is overtly stated and clear and communicated. If anybody does have one in their organization, we have a well-being approach that is very clear. That would be very helpful. Let's just have a look. Fiona, thank you for this. There's a coaching culture can really contribute. That's very, very true. This willingness to bring others along. And again, the question to anybody out there listening, whether there is a well-being approach. Now, Sally, thank you very much, Sally. A whole well-being and workplace team. Now, out of everybody watching here, then that's pretty unusual and pretty advanced.
But I don't think that necessarily will be in the future. I think I think it's Pinsent Masons. If it's not them, it's Denton's. Have got a chief wellbeing officer on a good salary and in an important role. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that I think that these sorts of positions are going to be more and more prevalent, where you've got people employed, remunerated as such as well, to make sure well-being works in a workplace. So whichever team or company that's got that that's great. It'd be interesting to chat to you to know a little bit more about it. I'm interested to know what those teams are doing, what they're responsible for. As I said, I'm working with central government on a few projects that's looking at well-being and how to define it and how it should be implemented. So any feedback from you in your organisations about things that potentially are working would be really great. So if you don't mind, that'd be great for us to catch up after this.
That'd be absolutely lovely, and that would be great. Sally, Fiona, you're mentioning it. Yeah, taking ideas into a new business about a wellbeing approach. That would be lovely. And Fiona, yes, thank you that you're happy to share the wellbeing initiatives that you're working in too. So it's having a concerted initiative from the top. John, there was a couple of slides you wanted to share as we draw to a close.
It was also to understand a little bit about those initiatives and what areas that they were looking to address. That came out from our surveys that we sent out to people. But I suppose if those wellbeing people are in place, do they have specific goals? If you have got some wellbeing initiatives, I don't know what it might be. you know, a lot of people do resilience training. Is it that you want to look at specifically stress, you know? So it'd be interesting if in chat, if anyone can just sort of say, you know, we have a wellbeing initiative in place to look at these certain areas. And I'll just talk about wellbeing culture to summarise then. So the analysis from Mind, and again, I can give you some stats and data that they've produced, looked at how employers can tackle well-being and with the lack of well-being culture. It shows that well-being culture is 25% or more effective if it's part of a culture. So just having some siloed initiatives, you know, resilience training once a year, great, brilliant. You'll get a £5 return on your investment of £1. But it's going to be 25% even more effective if you make it part of the culture. You start adopting it as part of the policy of the company. So that came from Mind, and they were just driving home that message from Deloitte.
Yeah, fantastic. And then there's some references and research, John. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
So the Stevenson Farmer reports there, you can just use the link. Mental Health Commission did some interesting work. Mind, I got the link there for the Wellbeing Index report. That's been updated in 2020, I think. Wellbeing, there you go, Central Government Health Department 2014. But again, I think that's been updated, so you can maybe use that link and it might take you to somewhere that's got more up-to-date data.
Yeah, perfect. And that really is the content. It would have been great to have more discussion, but you always can on this subject, right, John? If we could jump into breakout rooms and chat and share experiences. But we do have, sorry, I interrupted you again, so you can.
I think we're both excitable this morning, that's all.
I don't know what, I don't even know what day it is though. I've lost track now, so I'm just excitable every day now.
I was just yeah, I was just going to end really and suggesting that at the end of this session, we don't really have a lot of time to engage in chats, and we would love to. So what we're going to suggest doing is we'll get one of the team just to give you an email and maybe book you in for a chat if you want to. If you think I haven't got time for chats, you know, I'm focusing on other things, that can completely get it as well. You could always just email back with any questions, happy to help. So I think it'd be nice to maybe follow up in that way.
Yeah, and looking at the chat now in the last couple of minutes that we've got, I think it's very, very interesting. We've got Michelle just popped in, working with an organisation who have a people and wellbeing board. And I think, John, you were saying that there are wellbeing job titles. I'm just scrolling back up the ladder here of chat, and wellbeing champions. And then let me just quickly find it. Yep. So in each areas of the wellbeing champions in each area, in each office. I've seen mental health champions, mental health first aiders in many construction companies we work with. But it's good that the word well-being is happening out there too. So what will happen after the session together today? Be very, very delighted to send each of you the slides, of course. They're just as a quick reminder, and then with a suggestion, if you want to chat to John at any time, by all means, have a conversation with John at some stage about what your organisation may be thinking of doing, what it may want to do, or just general ideas, John. Right? Just general ideas and chit chat and thought about the subject.
Yeah, we'll be doing some more on these, maybe on some specific areas. So the last point really for me is that as we get more and more well-being officers and champions in an organisation, they start to influence in a similar way to a HR function works. This is how I see it being. You're going to have like the well-being and the HR working together, two separate roles but together. Then you'll start to be able to pick your initiatives. So you can say, well, I want to go to John for burnout training, and then the well-being officer would go and source the best method of training and bring it in, and then impart that through the organisation. So they will be your cultural champions. They will help to bring through that change and make sure that culture is upheld. So that's where I think we're going to go. And yeah, it'd be great to chat to anybody who's as passionate as us about this subject.
Okay. So what we're going to do to close, anybody who is, we'll send the slides through, and anybody who's willing to do this, we've all heard of the Zoom wave, right, John? Never done this before, but I just think it'd be really nice if anybody wants to participate, to switch your videos on, give a wave before you say goodbye. Don't have to do the unmute, don't have to say anything. But otherwise, we're going to close there. Wish you a fantastic day. It's lovely to see you. And we're going to see if we get a world record of the number of waves that are kicking off at any one time. So there are a few kicking off, so that's rather nice.
Look at that screen.
Look at this. I got a screen of waves. I think, how many have I got? Probably 24 waves kicking off at the moment. Yeah, and anybody who wishes to unmute their mic and shout goodbye as well, feel free to do it. It's really good to see you all. Have a lovely day today. Look after yourselves, look after your families. Take care, and we'll be in touch. And do contact us at any time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Great session.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marka. Keep
I was
safe,
going to say,
Nicola.
I think this is an example of how well-being in this sort of venue is really different to live, because how often would you acknowledge each other like this, even waving in a meeting?
Yeah, Fiona, you're right. And it's lovely to hear a voice from the Northeast.
Oh, right, yes.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah,
Fiona,
it's been excellent. Thank you.
thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Fiona.
Yeah, I'll get in touch with you outside because I've got my coach supervision now, so I better go.
Let's do that, Fiona. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, John.
All right, Michelle,
Bye.
thank you. Thank you, Michelle, so much. Matilda, appreciate meeting you. Thank you. And those of you moving your way out, well, I'm going to close in about a minute's time, and then we'll work on through the rest of the day. Thank you very much, John, for your time. Okay, so I'm going to shut off now. There's 7 folk online, but I'm just going to disconnect, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.